My name is Youngmi Mayer, and I would put in my immigrant jam spicy peppers, chili. I love chili jam. Maybe Szechuan peppercorn. I love peppercorn and jam. That's like something that I do. Maybe cranberries. Maybe it'll be like a cranberry sauce that's spicy.
Welcome back to another amazing episode of Immigrant Jam, the podcast. We have, our guest today is one of my favorite people in this city. Definitely has the best hair in this city. Amazing comedian, artist, mother, podcast host,
Stupid ass
podcaster,
bitch.
stupid ass bitch for sure.
It's official.
A restaurateur, ex-restaurateur. I don't know how to.
I guess that's, yeah.
And gorgeous super woman.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah. Welcome, Youngmi Mayer. I was like, I should say your name. Do you consider yourself an immigrant?
Well, it's complicated. I think that I didn't grow up in the States. I moved here when I was 20. And so I feel like an immigrant in a lot of ways. Like my upbringing was very different. But then I'm an American citizen. So I kind of feel like an imposter saying that. Do you know what I mean? Even though I moved here when I was 20.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, your background is wild. So you were born in Korea, right? Mm-hmm. And then I don't know how old you were when you guys moved to Saipan. Am I saying that right? Saipan.
Yeah.
And which is an American Commonwealth.
It is. Yep.
And then you just said you moved to America when you were 20, and your dad's American, right?
He is.
Right.
And my mom is, she's Korean, but she naturalized before I was born. So they were both American citizens. That's why I'm, an American citizen, even though I was born abroad. Mm-hmm. And yeah, like Saipan is an American Commonwealth. So technically, I guess really technically, I did grow up in America. Do you know what I mean? But it's just like a part of America nobody really knows about.
Yeah. And it's the history. I read a little bit about the history of Saipan. I don't know why every time I say that word, I'm like, I'm saying this wrong. And it's wild. I mean, one of the things I thought was so crazy was that because of the way the laws worked for a long time, basically the majority population living on the island were not citizens and didn't have any rights to being naturalized. So like the majority population was alien.
Yeah, the law
on the island.
Yeah, it was like I don't remember. Okay, I'm going to just I never researched it, but just like my memories of growing up there for a long period of time, anyone that was born there was born as an American citizen because it was like considered American soil. And I think the indigenous people of that island, Chamorros, are still to this day consider like if they're born, they can get they're born as U.S. citizens. But I think there was like a period of time like in the 80s and 90s, maybe earlier even, that a lot of people from Asia were moving there to have a baby so their baby would be an American citizen.
Okay. Right. So they were kind of like trying to stop that.
Yeah, but I don't even know if that was a big motivation for a lot of people to move there. I do know some people, like my classmates growing up that were from Korea. I think their parents did that for that reason, but it wasn't like a crazy boom, like where it was like millions of people were like sneaking in to do that. It was just like a handful of people.
I read that a lot of people came from China to work, and they're like easy for big American companies to get their stuff made there. They could label it made in USA, but the same labor laws and minimum wage laws didn't apply there.
Yep.
So all these people were brought over, and that's what I'm talking about. Those people weren't entitled to any type of immigration status. So there was like this majority population, according to the things that I read, that said that like basically the majority of the island were,
undocumented.
aliens. Yeah, undocumented, which I think is so crazy.
That is really interesting because when I was growing up, there were very large garment factories on the island, and the people that worked there were undocumented. I believe they were being like traveling in through big like ships that were like sort of secret, you know, because nobody was really keeping track. It's like a very secluded island. There's like not a lot of, you know, people there, period. And there were accounts of those garment factories having tens of thousands of workers. And like the population of Saipan when I was growing up was, I believe it was like maybe 20,000 actually, right?
Yeah.
And they said that there were upwards to like 50,000 undocumented workers that were hidden in the barracks.
Exactly.
That we didn't have access to. So we would see them. We would see these big facilities on the island, but they were so secretive that nobody was allowed to leave. So we never saw the people that worked there.
That's crazy.
It was basically just like a very, really, really bad situation, you know? And the interesting thing, though, is that they would get 1 day a month off, right? Obviously, this is like extremely abusive situation that was going on. And the rest of the people that lived on the island would never really interact or see them except for this 1 day off out of nowhere. There would be just like thousands of like East Asian people just like walking around, and we'd be like, crazy. Where are the like who are these people? Isn't that so intense? So then
so crazy.
And then I remember my mom's Korean, so growing up we went to church every week. My mom's really religious, and they would come to church. Like they would like their I think it was like a Sunday that they had off. So all of a sudden one day a month it'd just be like packed with these like young Chinese people. And because the reason why they came to our church is because a lot of them were from the region of China that borders North Korea. It's called like Chosunjok in Korean. And so they understood Korean, and they speak like a dialect of Korean. And so they came to our church, and like I remember some of them were, you know, like I grew to like know some of them, and like you know,
I was just gonna ask if you ever became friends or talked to any of them, or if it was like, no, you shouldn't talk to these people. If they were like other.
Well, I mean, for Koreans, we were just like, we didn't care because we were just like, oh, there's these people, these young, you know, they're like in their early 20s, like, oh, these young people in our church, that's part of our community. There was never a feeling of Korean people being like, don't come to our church. Like, you know, they were more than happy to have them. But it was bizarre because then they would like disappear, you know, and it's like, I actually haven't thought about this for a long time, but it's like kind of sad. You know? Like,
very. It's crazy. And also really fucked up once again by the U.S. government, how they just, you know.
It's really fucked up.
Came and took that island and then sort of used it to circumvent labor laws and get their stuff made for cheap, you know, and abuse people and exploit people, basically.
Yeah, it's a complicated situation because the person in charge, the man that owned all these garment factories, was like I'm assuming probably a billionaire, you know, because he was making so much money, and he was Chinese American, I believe. Like I think he grew up in the States for at least partially, and so he was, you know, somehow he had connections to mainland China, and this was his like little company,
right?
It was his scheme, and so it's very, you know, it's a complicated situation, but I believe he was like American, you know, like citizenship wise.
I heard you talk about how because on the island there was so many different you know, groups of people living there, and different groups of, you know, people from different countries in Asia. It was kind of like this like place where nobody fit in. So you didn't really have the sense of being, you know, different or wanting to fit in, because not fitting in was what the thing was there.
Yeah, I think it was like too small, and all the like different groups of people were too small for there to be a real like we're the main people here and you are like
And I guess nobody was really from there anyway. Nobody could claim like except the Chamorros.
Yeah. The indigenous population Chamorros definitely felt a stake in like ownership, and there was some of that was going on. And just like being a kid, like I remember growing up there, it was like really cool to be Chamorro because they were like, well, this is our place. And like, I know a lot of people that I grew up with that are like Korean or just not Chamorro. They would, it's kind of like how I think a lot of Asian Americans get in trouble for doing this, but they would put on like a black accent, you know, like they would put on like a Chamorro accent.
We did that. I grew up in New York. I was 8 when we moved here.
Yeah.
And I went to an international school, so I had a bunch of German friends, and it was so uncool to be German, obviously, as it still is. And we all wanted to be Puerto Rican. Like, like real New Yorkers, you know? And we all started like talking like this. I had a friend, a German girl who's like literally like got the most German name ever. She would wear door knocker earrings, put the brown lip liner, you know, like dye her hair black, gel everything, like gel the little curls to her cheeks, you know, like the nails, everything, and just like talk like this. And we would be like, oh my God, like, what are you doing here? And then our parents would call us and we'd be like, hallo, ja, ich komm nach Hause und esse Schnitzel.
It's so funny.
So yeah, totally. I know exactly what you're talking about. Did you do that? Were you,
no.
Did you want to be Chamorro?
No, because I felt like, I think even back then I was kind of aware of like, that's weird.
Cultural appropriation.
That's kind of weird. Like, I obviously I had a lot of Chamorro friends, and I thought they were really cool, and I thought their culture was so fascinating. But I was like, I'm obviously not Chamorro. Like, I'm not gonna be doing that. Like, I think it's a. I totally. I'm sure when I was maybe a younger kid, I probably had that accent, you know, because obviously everyone sort of had like a pseudo Chamorro accent living there, and I'm sure that there were like points of my life when I was a younger kid, because I was like really tan, and people were like not sure what my ethnicity was because I am, you know, biracial, so it's not very obvious that I'm white or, you know, Korean. So I think there were periods when I was like a younger kid, probably like 8 to 10, but like not really like in high school, you know, like how people would do things like that in high school. Like I never did it consciously as a teen or anything.
So you were like pretty secure in not needing to like be this or that, not needing to be like Korean or white as a teenager. You were already like able to embrace the like cross-cultural thing.
I don't know. I don't really like, I feel like I hear so many Asian Americans, like most of my friends are Asian people that grew up in America, right? And they have like had huge struggles with that. And I feel like weirdly I have had less of a struggle with that. And I'm not exactly sure why. Cause like, I mean, I remember having all these thoughts struggling about I think personally, I always was secure in my identity, knowing that I'm like biracial. Like I was always okay with that. And I understood that. And it was never confusing to me, but then I would have all these other thoughts about, you know, I think a lot of comparisons between the two cultures, just because I was just like very violently toggling back and forth, you know what I mean? And so, yeah, but it never extended to like confusion about my identity, weirdly.
Do you think that's something that like because of how you were raised, or?
I don't know. I guess like I was never really made fun of that badly for my racial makeup. You know what I mean? Like my friends that struggle with that, you know, like Asian Americans that I mentioned that grew up in the States, I think a lot of the trauma that they have around the confusion is because they were like bullied or made fun of for that, right? But that was never like the main point of why I was bullied as a kid. So
you're like, I gave them other reasons to bully me.
Stupid ass bitch, number one.
You're like, look over here.
I just want to mention, just in case people think it's weird that I said that, I was walking into the reception and called me a stupid ass bitch.
She did.
So, and you know what? And I'm letting it go.
She's dead now.
Woosahing it. I'm just kidding.
Sleeping with the fishes.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I'm just kidding. I just feel seen and heard. That wasn't like the main reason. This is really interesting. I think you'll like this a lot because I moved to Saipan when I was 6, right?
Okay.
And before that, I was very severely bullied and traumatized by how Koreans treated me.
I don't like that at all.
So I think, you're gonna love this, Lucie. Here's the juicy.
Not only is David Hasselhoff German, I was bullied.
Not only, my life is falling apart. How could you be German, David?
So wait, you were bullied as a little kid in Korea for not being fully Korean,
for being biracial, and I have to just say this: this is so hard for me to talk about on the internet. Like, I make a lot of content online about being biracial and being Korean and whatever. But the second I mention this, like, Asian Americans get so fucking angry because they're like, no, in this country, all my biracial friends get treated way better than me. You guys are like, you get hired before full Asians in movies. It's like fucking Henry Golding, and like you get placed above us. And I'm like, yeah, because this is a white supremacist country. Like, let's be honest, white people
for sure
do way better than everyone else in this country because it's a white run country. And yes, like Hollywood is looking for sort of whitewashed Asians. And I believe the fact that when you went to school, a biracial person was treated better than you, especially if they're white passing. You know what I mean? Like, I understand what you were saying, but it doesn't change the fact that in Korea, there is this deep-seated belief. It's an extremely racially homogenous country, right? It's like, I mean, I think there's more foreigners now, but it's like maybe when I was growing up, it was like 99% just Koreans. And the only
you also didn't grow up in Seoul, right?
Yeah, I grew up, I grew up on this island called Jeju-do, which is a long story. But anyway, back in those days, the only foreigners were American military servicemen who didn't really integrate with the society because they were on their bases.
Right.
So it was very rare for a Korean to see a foreign person.
Right.
And the only biracial people, for the most, obviously not the only, like most of them were people who were left behind after servicemen got like prostitutes pregnant, right?
Ah, okay, right.
And societally, if they saw a biracial person, they were like, your mom's a prostitute.
Child.
Yeah, you're a bastard. And no one gives a shit about you. Right. That was like right at the end of the cusp of that sort of thinking sort of going away was my childhood, the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
And now it's like obviously way different, but there is still underlying resentment towards or this like assumption that if you are biracial, you're from a bad or poor family, or they're like a broken family or a weird
or
situation.
There's like shame around it, shame attached to it.
And they also obviously Koreans like there's a lot of nuance. So they're like, if you're a biracial person and you live in the States and you're visiting on vacation, they're like, okay, you have a Korean parent, but you live in the States and they're married, blah blah blah. So it's like it's very different than a Korean like biracial person living in Korea, only speaking Korean. It's like, oh, like they would assume that.
So did that make you wish you were fully Korean, or did it make you wish you weren't living in Korea and you were white living in America instead? Like, did you?
I don't think I was old enough to really process, but I really wished I just absorbed the information. I am not like other people, other children. And this thing makes me really bad. And people are picking on me for that. And it's embarrassing. And it made me like really ashamed of that. But I think all of that happened when I was too young to really fully process. And I think that's why when I went to Saipan, I'm sure that probably a few things happened to me that were like race-based bullying, but it was so like mild compared to my younger childhood that it didn't even bother me, I think.
So you were happy to move.
Yeah, I was happy. And then when I did go, move to Saipan, it was just so small. Back then there were like so few people, outside of the garment factory barracks that we never saw them. There's so few people that, like I said, it was like even hard to be like, oh, we don't like you because you're. I'm like, you have like 3 classmates, bro. Like, you got a slim pickings
you
here.
Have to like
you don't
me.
like me. Who are gonna hang out with though? Like, it was like one white girl, one black girl, and me. Which like we don't even have enough like of stereotypes to really throw at each other. But, obviously it's like not 100% true.
So you are a mother, and and your son has grown up in the States so far, at least. I think, because when we moved here, I was 8. I think that's your son's age, right?
He's 8, yeah.
Yeah. And when we moved here, I didn't want to move, and I hated it at first. I didn't speak English. And then now, in retrospect, as an adult, I think, and I'm curious if you feel that way too, that the experience of moving and having to like adapt and, live a new life in a new place as a kid is something really valuable.
Yeah.
And something that I feel, that's why I always feel so connected to people that have had that experience, whether or not, there's other stuff I connect with them on. But that is always like this connection, this like shared experience of having gone through that and having to have learned how to adapt. Do you feel like that like colors everything you do and your comedy and the way that you behave, and do you sometimes think like you should expose your son to that in some way? You know what I mean? Even if, do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yes, I think I was like, I guess if I really think about the big shift that happened for me, that like what happened to you when you were 8 was like me moving from Korea to Saipan, right? And I think I was a little too young to really understand that, like, because you were 8, you were a little more aware.
Yeah.
I think about my son a lot because I, want him to be more immersed in Korean culture. And I have thought of moving back to Korea for a little bit, a period of his childhood. Not, permanently, obviously, but like maybe for 2 years while he's a child. I don't know how that's going to happen in my life because it's, but I have wanted that for a while. And yeah, I do think that there's something very important about it.
So he speaks Korean?
He doesn't.
He doesn't speak Korean. He understands it at all?
A little bit, but yeah, I don't really actively, I'm fluent in Korean, but I don't really actively speak it in my day-to-day, which is interesting. And so, yeah, like that's another thing that I kind of want to get on top of. But for me, I guess this kind of speaks to what I was talking about when I was a young child living in Korea, because I have had so much trauma from them not accepting me. Like that was like my earliest sort of vibe from society, right? Like this society doesn't accept me. I think that's been probably like subconsciously the reason that I am afraid of getting to know his Korean culture. Like there's a fear there where I'm like, oh, I was rejected. I don't want him to feel that. If that makes sense.
Yeah, totally makes sense. I guess also, your podcast, Feeling Asian, is this way to like process or kind of like dig into all of that, right? And to kind of like figure out what does it actually mean and what is the identity and right? I mean,
yeah,
it feels that way to me listening to it and your, I guess, your comedy too. It's always like, there's always something that goes back to kind of processing that.
Yeah, my identity. Yeah. It's, like even though I do feel secure about it, I think it's more like an expression of, like for me, when I think about the podcast and my comedy, it's more like, even though I do feel secure in it, I'm like, oh, this is how I see the world as an Asian person.
Right.
And this is my experience. And I feel like that is more valuable than just hearing somebody process my identity.
Yeah,
Does
totally.
that make sense? Like,
totally makes sense. I've been thinking lately that like maybe this like notion of having this national identity is outdated anyway. Like
for sure.
Today where everything is so cross-cultural, we're still like separating people by what passport they have or where they were born.
It's weird.
And it's weird, yeah.
And a lot of the world doesn't really live like that, which is something that I discovered because, when I did move back to Korea for high school, and I went to like international school. And I think once you get involved in that community, it's a lot of the world that they're like, I'm like a French person and I grew up in Australia and my dad is Swedish, and it's just like, and I speak fluent English because I just grew up outside of these like ideas that people, I guess, who don't really travel a lot don't understand, that a lot of the world is just like moving around like that, and they don't have those like solid ideas of I'm an American, you know, like,
and also what home means. That home, I guess, I mean, I'm also Jewish, so like my people have always been, you know, moving around. So I sometimes think like, it's kind of a generational thing for me that I don't feel at home in, that it's not tied to a country, to a national identity, but that it's tied to like people, or, you know, or a place like New York where everybody's from somewhere else. But I think it's interesting. I think like the title of your podcast in that sense is interesting, because it's like about like what's the feeling like, and what does it mean to feel Asian, right? And as opposed to like as opposed to being tied to a certain country or passport, or even, you know, something that is, you know, put upon you by other people. It's like, what does it feel like to you? Especially because there are so many, like you said, so many Asian Americans that have this like almost like identity crisis in a way, because they're not this one thing and they're not the other thing. So in a way, it's like, I feel like in a way there should be a new word, like non-binary. You know what I mean? Like, I agree. For people like us, or for people that don't have that sort of, where the identity is like fluid, kind of. Yes. The national identity.
I think I agree with you. It's like, you know, a lot of Asian Americans have this discussion, like, I'm not Asian and I'm not American, I'm Asian American. But I think that's like a great way to look at it. Like what you said, it's just like, maybe our need for that is something that we should look at, you know, like why do, because I'm always like, I don't know what the fuck, I don't know where I'm from, because it's like my story is so annoying.
I know exactly what you mean.
I don't want to explain it, so I'm just like, I don't know, whatever, like whatever you think.
I totally get it. I'm the same way, because if I say I'm German, I feel weird, because I was 8 when we left. If I say I'm American, it feels weird. My mom's Romanian, like, and Jewish, like, and it's annoying. It's like, now I have to lay all that out for you to understand that like the answer is, there is no answer, you know?
I think we have very similar experiences with this, because I think because of my annoyingly long, complicated explanation to where I'm from or who I am, I've just always been like, ugh, I just don't want to talk. And I don't know if you do this, but if I meet someone, I never and I'm just like, I never ask what ethnicity they are. So my closest friend when I was in my early 20s, my first close friend that I made when I moved to the States, she's half black and half white. And for years, I didn't even fucking ask. And I just like, in the back of my head, I was like, if she feels like it's important to tell me, but I didn't even think about that. I didn't wonder what she was. Like, she looks very Indian, and she tells me like people think she's Indian all the time. So in the back of my head, I was just like, I don't know, like, maybe she's like,
she was your best friend. You had no idea.
No, I just it never occurred to me.
I ask all the time.
Oh, you do?
I do, but only because I always want to know the story. And I think though, also hearing you talk about not asking makes me kind of think I probably do that also, because like I always want to like feel like I have like it's like, oh, we have stuff in common, because I always have this like feeling of being an outsider always, and being weird and not fitting in. So I'm always like, oh, maybe, you know, that way we can connect. And the story, I always love like hearing the story. But then in that sense, sometimes I ask and people are like, well, and I'm like, oh, this is actually annoying, because it's annoying for me too when I have
subjective.
to explain.
Yeah, it's like some people love talking about it. You know what I mean? So
it's like, interesting though. I think during Trump and what happens in Germany a lot, because it's so unfriendly to foreigners. You know, historically, a lot of times you'll get people who have like a very heavy accent in German, and you'll be like, "Where are you from?" And they'll go, "Germany," and you're like, "Oh, I wasn't trying to say go back to where you come from with that question." You know, I was just like interested, you know?
Yeah, it's subjective. Some people are sensitive. Some people are okay with it. And like, it has a lot of, but I think for me, I was like, you know, like if it's important to somebody for me to know about their ethnicity or where they come from, I'm sure they'll tell me, and I, you know, would love to listen. But I'm not like trying to make this weird, but like, I just like, this is so, not to sound like I don't see color or whatever, but like, I'm just like, if I'm friends with somebody, I'm just like, I'm friends with you. It's like, like, what does it have, unless you want to tell me, you know, obviously for you, it's like a big part of and I love hearing your background and, you know, about David Hasselhoff. And so like, I always wanted to know why Germans love David Hasselhoff. But like, you know, obviously if that's a discussion led by the other person, I'm fascinated.
Right.
But it's like, also a big part of me is like, we're friends. Like, I would like you whether you were from Germany or not, right? Like, I don't know. It's like kind of like that sort of feeling.
Yeah. Like, no, totally. I get it.
It's like when people ask like how old somebody is right off the bat. Like, I have had friends for years, like the same thing. Like I just have friends sometimes and you just don't know how old they are. And then one day it comes up like, I'm 48 or something. And I'm like, oh, that's why. I don't know why I need to know that like info for me to be your friend. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. I'm the same way also about like sexuality. I never.
Exactly.
And it's not that I don't ask because I'm like, that's not something you ask. I don't like.
I just don't
It
care.
doesn't come into my head to ask.
Yeah.
And then a lot of times I've had people be like, oh, and you know, I'm gay or whatever. And I'm like, oh,
and then
I
you're
had
like, what?
I'm just like, well, I thought we were dating. And yes, that happened to me. That actually did happen to me. But no, totally. I don't think about it.
Yeah.
I just don't.
I don't think
because also I don't care.
And I think a lot of times people ask to make small talk, which is fun. You know, like some people are like, oh, like, where are you from or something, and and they don't even think about it. And
with the age, I feel like a lot of this happened to me recently.
What is the reason to know someone's age?
I am.
Why do you need to know that?
Right. So I told her.
Right? I don't know.
And then she goes, oh my God, you look great for that age. Which also that line, I'm always
so
like,
sexist.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, how old are you? Right. Because I was like, okay, I always get awkward during conversations anyway, and I don't know what to say. So I'm like, okay, this will be a good way to continue this conversation. Yeah. Right. So I'm like, how old are you? And she's like, oh, I don't tell anybody my age.
Weird.
I was like, wait,
why'd you ask me then?
Asked me to make, I think she asked me to make herself feel better. She was hoping
she was trying to put you somewhere in her head. Right?
Exactly.
Okay, yeah.
There was something about that
Weird.
where she was like trying to make herself feel better about something. I was like, what the hell?
Which, you know what? Good.
What?
You know, good for her. Good for her.
Good for her. Yeah.
She needed that.
I guess so. Stupid ass
but
bitch.
The age thing is interesting because this is like another thing, you know, I was saying when I was a kid, I would constantly compare the two cultures that I was like going back and forth. In Korea, it's like one of the first things you ask somebody because in Korean
age?
In Korean society, it's structured in a way where you have to use a different language to people who are older than you.
Right.
And you have to act differently. There's a completely different language that I don't even know if that's how to say it. It's a different language for older people. Like like conjugated. The verbs are conjugated differently.
We have that in German too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So for David Hasselhoff, you would be like...
It would be a Z instead of a du. Du is you and Z is the formal that you use for older people.
Yeah. And so...
then the verbs get conjugated.
So in Germany, do you ask people their age right away?
No.
Or it's
in
just
Germany, no, because people age so badly there. It's so obvious.
It's just an assumption.
No, but in Germany, what's interesting is the first question always is, what do you do?
Oh.
They categorize,
it's like a money class thing? Or
it's like a class, and it's like, oh, okay, so you're a lawyer. That makes you this type of a person.
Yeah.
And, you know, which I always hate. And like it's I went to a wedding once in Germany and they made you wear name tags with your name and your job at the wedding, and people be like
a job fair or something.
Hello, Youngmi there, comedian. Now I know. Now I know who you are. Yeah, it was so weird. It was a wedding. So weird.
I think it says a lot about cultures and what they find important. And the age thing in Korea, you know, not only is it because of the language, it's like very much like how much respect you show somebody. Right. But as we all know, there are complete fucking idiots that are 80 years old. So you should not respect them.
Yes.
Because they're fucking stupid.
Yes.
And you know, I can say that word because I am also stupid. Somebody got mad at me for saying the word stupid online.
Really?
Yeah, they were like, "That's like really ableist," and I was like, "Yeah, I see what you're saying, but also I am also stupid." So I feel like I own that word. It's the Wild West out there, folks. That's all I'm gonna say about that. But
I don't know. I don't think you're stupid, but I think you can still use the word stupid.
Like, you don't have to be neurodivergent to be stupid. Like,
no.
You know, you can be a regular. I don't know. I don't want to get you in trouble. So
nobody's getting in trouble. Get me in trouble.
But
stupid.
But in Korea, yeah, it's like, why, like the idea that you should respect somebody because they're older, like part of that I love because yeah, like in this culture, obviously in America, people talk shit about how Americans throw their parents into like homes or don't support them when they're old. And that is very bad. But then also in Korea, the fact that you're financially dependent on your family a lot of times until you're in your 40s and they decide for you things in your life that they absolutely maybe should not, you know? And I'm like, that's not good either, you know?
Yeah, it's like this idea of this like blind, it's like almost like religion, right? Yes. Like bow before this person without looking at, you know, what the actions or the what the person actually is.
Yeah. And it's like the job thing in Germany. Like you should, like, why should I respect somebody because they make more money than me? A lot of stupid people make money.
Yeah.
A lot of money.
Yeah.
You know?
Totally. I mean, I think it's crazy. That's a whole different thing. But I think it's insane how we're like told and conditioned to worship rich people just because it's like Jeff Bezos. You're not allowed to be like, that guy's a fucking asshole. People are like,
sucks.
What? He made all this money. So I
what?
have to respect him because he made money the center of his life and that's all he cares about. And he thinks it's okay to have more than almost everybody in the world. Like, why is that okay? Give some money away. What the fuck? Oh, he gives money away. No, fuck off.
Yeah.
Not a fan. I don't respect people for money at all.
And now I'm like spiraling about using the word stupid, but like, even if somebody isn't smart, like I'm not gonna disrespect them for not being smarter than me. Or do you know what I mean? I feel like that sort of like idea of having to respect somebody for their some sort of societally placed virtue that isn't real, it bothers me a lot, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. I love like sayings, proverbs, expressions from different countries and languages because I always think it says a lot about the mentality, the way that like they phrase proverbs or certain expressions. I found one in Korean that I like that apparently in Korean you don't make up your mind about something. You say when you're making up your mind, you eat your heart. Is that true?
심장 먹어? 마음 먹어? Yeah. I'm sorry. I thought I was like 마음 먹어. Yeah. Yep. Sorry, I said the heart. I said heart in like a medical way. I was like heart eating, and I was like, no. Oh, 마음 먹어. Yeah.
Cardiovascular cannibalism.
I was
That's not a thing.
Koreans don't say that. No, 마음 먹어 is such a common phrase that I didn't even realize that that's how it's like technically said.
So that like when you say like, oh, I'm trying to make up my mind, you say like I'm eating my heart.
I mean, it technically means like maum is like the word for it's a weird, not a weird word, but it's a hard word to describe because maum is like my mind, my thoughts in my mind, but it's in your body. Koreans think of that in your heart, which is, they do that in English too, right? Like, you're gonna set your heart on something,
right? That's
right,
true.
even though you're talking about your thoughts.
Yep.
But they're kind of maum is like interchangeable between like thoughts and your heart, you know? So it's like
it thoughts or is it like your soul? Is it your soul then?
God, I never even yeah, it's like your thoughts or your heart, right? Your thoughts. But
you wouldn't go to a doctor and be like, my maum hurts.
No, yeah, right. You would say 심장, which is like what I was thinking. I was like, who says that? It's like the medical term for heart.
So maum is like more of like a poetic word.
A poetic heart. Yeah. I never even realized that it means to eat it. 마음 먹었어. Like it's such a like, it's like one of those like phrases that I learned. It's so common that I just never even broke it down in my head. Yeah, that's what it means.
To eat your heart.
Yeah, but it sounds so weird when you say it like that. It's weird.
That
Yeah,
sounds
'cause,
so
like,
weird. That's why I'm trying to understand, like, because I know in German there's, German is also like a very poetic language, different obviously than Korean, but then when you break it down and kind of think like, oh, where does that come from? It always reveals something, I looked at a lot of sayings and a lot of them were centered on food and eating. Mm-hmm. So maybe it's just that in Korean culture, a lot is expressed through food. I don't know.
Yeah, it feels like
reaching?
When I hear maybe that makes sense. I think there are a lot of phrases about food. If in Korean, how it feels to me is almost like if someone says "swallow your heart." You know what I mean? Like that's 마음 먹어. Like, but I don't know the why.
So almost like stop fucking around and just swallow your heart already. Make up your mind.
Yeah. Like do it.
Okay. Good.
Do it, then move on.
We analyze that. Do you have a favorite saying or proverb or expression? Or even
I have
word?
so many. Well, this is a similar one. When somebody says that they forgot something, they say 까먹었어. 까먹었다 means like I peeled it and I ate it.
That's so
and that
funny.
means I forgot, and I don't know why that is.
Like, I peeled it and I ate it, meaning like I didn't
like
even
peel
pause
something.
between.
Yeah.
I just peeled it and ate it without thinking.
Yeah, I don't know.
Just
Like,
adding
I've never
own
thought
thing to this.
Maybe it's like 까먹었어 is like you opened it up and then you ate the inside, and maybe it's, I don't know, like maybe it's just like if you eat something like that, you forget after you eat it or something.
Interesting. Or maybe it's like you peeled it and ate it without even like thinking about sharing it with anybody or what you were, you know what I mean? Maybe that's like, oh, I forgot myself.
Well, it's like if you were like, hey, Youngmi, did you bring like the blue dress that I told you to bring to this podcast? I'd be like, oh, 까먹었어. Like I peeled it and ate it.
I peeled it and ate it.
So I forgot. Like, you know what I mean?
It kind of makes sense to me without really being able to articulate why.
Yeah,
but it makes
I know
sense.
what you mean. Yeah, even the 마음 먹었어, I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
Why does that make sense?
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I peeled it and ate it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll look into it.
I have some questions that I have to ask you that I ask everybody.
Okay. So excited.
Okay.
I love questionnaires.
Okay.
Is that weird?
No, I love questionnaires too.
Right?
I love that. Yeah. Okay. So in a movie about the Statue of Liberty, who would you cast as the Statue of Liberty?
Oh, Kate Winslet. Right?
Really?
Because her face looks like the Statue of Liberty.
I love it. Yeah. Why not?
She looks like a very 1902
That's true.
woman face.
That's true. She's a good statue face. Yeah. I agree.
Wait, is this supposed to be like because she stands for freedom or something?
No, it's whoever you
comes
want.
to mind. Okay.
Yeah, whoever comes to mind. We've had mostly things that made sense so far. Yeah,
I told you.
Oh my god,
it's a thing.
She totally looks
it's a
like
thing.
it's a thing.
It's a thing. Whoa. Now I want to have a better answer. I feel like
insane.
She has that face.
I've never even thought about that.
Classic. I think they call it like a classical Roman face or something.
She has a classical Roman face. That's
I think
true.
that's what it's called. Yeah.
Yeah, very symmetric.
Very symmetric, like the jaw, like a little, the jaw and the nose.
Yeah.
Good bone structure.
Good bone structure.
Yeah.
Whenever I go to LA, people always go, "You're so New York," and I always think, does that mean my face isn't symmetrical?
No, your face is very symmetrical.
It's not symmetrical.
Is it? I can't tell.
I don't think so. I don't think so. Okay, number 2. If you could add one face to Mount Rushmore, who would you add?
Can I take off the faces?
I love it. Yes.
'Cause why the hell are they on the mountain? Like, really? Were any of them that great?
I love that.
Abe Lincoln, maybe. We don't even know that much about him. I don't know. I don't think anybody would want to be up there with those people. Who would
those fuckers?
Who should be up there? I read this thing. I don't know if this is true, but apparently before the presidents, it was a mountain that had faces of like indigenous people carved into it.
Really?
I never looked it. I never researched
it.
So if it's true, I wonder. Because if it's true, then I kind of want the originals replaced. I feel like.
Okay, I'm with that for sure.
I read that somewhere and I never looked into it. But now I'm like, yeah, I don't know if that sounds.
That makes total sense.
Because then they would just like put the faces over that.
Well, it makes sense that those fucking white people didn't come up with that. And they were like, that's a great idea. We're going to do that.
But what a weird thing.
Our own.
I've never thought of Mount Rushmore in so long. Is this like America-based questionnaire?
It's just like an immigrant-based questionnaire.
Right. Why would anyone go to Mount Rushmore?
I don't know.
What's the reason for that?
I mean, I guess it's a reason just to go into nature. And a lot of people need a reason to go into nature, maybe. Maybe. I don't know. I've never been there either. I would love to go to the Grand Canyon, but I don't think that's the same thing.
Yeah, no.
Okay, what is the most American thing you've ever done?
What's the most American thing I've ever done? What's the most American thing I've ever done? I would say American thing. I complained about my what did I complain about? I feel like I contacted customer service about something, and I feel like I was like, I felt like I was putting it on a character, and I was like, I have never been this disrespected. Like I was just like, this is my $18 package that's gone missing, and I was like I was in character for that.
Great. That is very American. You don't do that in Germany. Also, customer service in Germany, they're like,
America.
Hello, and you're like, this isn't nice. You overcharged me, and then they just yell at you, and you end up apologizing.
Yeah,
it's so bad.
I mean, I think there's a beautiful like center there that none of us are ever reaching. It's either like full blown Karen or you're apologizing to somebody for losing your $200 package. It's like there's probably a medium ground where no one gets mad and we figured out the logistics, but it's
one
too many
would
emotions.
Hope. Okay, what's the most Korean thing you've ever done?
What's the most Korean thing I've ever done? Well, I guess just like feel bad for everything. I don't know. I don't want to.
Sure you're not Jewish?
That's a Korean thing. Don't culturally appropriate. No, I don't want to say that because I don't want it to be like. I always feel like. Do you ever feel this way? Like you'll say like a stereotype about your people, but then the wrong people hear it, and you're like, no, don't listen.
Yeah.
The most Korean thing I've ever done. I think maybe. I don't know. Just like, I guess food wise, everything, like just the fact that I basically only eat Korean food. That's like very Korean, I think.
Okay. I love it. If you could add one amendment to the Constitution, what would it be?
God, one amendment, huh? One amendment. I would say it would probably, I mean, this is the thing. I'm sorry. Are these answers too long?
No.
Okay.
Not at all.
The Constitution, the funny thing with the Constitution and the amendments are that they're actually like, in theory, very good. Like they're written like pretty okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the Constitution's actually like pretty fire. It's just that the people that like are fucking about it now.
Mm-hmm. It's a little bit like the Bible.
Yeah, it's a little, it's like, the Bible is like, if you read, it's like, there's some points. Some points were made. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But like, the cuckoos that like it too much have ruined it for everyone.
Yeah.
What amendment should I add to the David Hasselhoff loses citizenship immediately? He has to go back to Germany where he's from. No more. We've had enough.
I love it.
Pretending to be American.
David? Okay, great. What American food would you ban if you were president?
Would I ban? I would say all the American foods that are banned in Europe because I feel like what's up with that?
All the GMO stuff.
Is that what's going on?
Yeah, that's what's
going on. Why are they?
On.
I thought GMOs were okay.
No,
they're
GMOs are not okay.
I that's the one food thing that I like thought was because it's like never mind. I don't know anything about GMOs. I'm not gonna.
No, GMOs are not okay.
The little
I think
research
they give you cancer.
I did.
I don't know. No?
Mike
says no.
GMOs, I thought GMOs were the one thing.
No, GMOs are just terrible. It's genetically modified organism.
But I thought
who wants that?
GMOs are like could also like refer to like natural because we've been modifying our food forever, right? I don't know. Let's not. I don't even want. I don't even. I don't know enough to even start this conversation.
I have a friend who has cut GMOs out of her life, and whenever she eats them now, she just farts for like days.
Okay, that sounds.
So there you go.
So it's proven GMOs are bad.
Scientifically
we
proven.
We have proof.
Okay, if you could deport one American person, who would you deport?
David Hasselhoff.
Stop it. Okay.
Go away.
All right,
I'm just
fine.
kidding. I have no problem with David Hasselhoff. He is the hamburger on floor eating.
Cheeseburger.
The cheeseburger,
Wendy's.
shirtless cheeseburger on floor.
Yeah.
That kept me alive for like 5 solid years.
Yeah.
The laughter from that was worth it. Who would I deport? Why would I deport anyone? I don't know.
You wouldn't deport anyone?
Maybe Jeff Bezos, because
I like it.
Then wherever he goes, he'll have to pay taxes.
Yes.
And the world will like reap the benefits. Why doesn't he pay taxes?
Why doesn't he pay taxes?
Why is it going to hurt him to pay taxes? I don't get it.
Yes, exactly.
What's
I don't
the
get
point
it. Fuck
of
you.
having that much money and like
There's no point. I agree.
all of them.
I agree. All of them.
Doesn't make any sense.
Okay, great.
Jeff Bezos. Yeah.
Okay, Jeff Bezos. Great. And then this is the final question. It's very important. It's very serious. I know that you want David Hasselhoff to go back to Germany, so this may help.
I've
but
turned around on
do you
that.
actually know how I could meet David Hasselhoff?
Is this really the question?
Yes.
Does he have Instagram? Because I feel like
He does have Instagram.
He does.
Yeah. Do you think I should just hit him up?
I think you could like comment your way into there.
You think so?
Tweet. I feel like tweets are a really fast way to get a celebrity's attention.
Okay.
Because if you have a tweet and it blows up, they will see it. They will.
I mean,
see it.
I'm not gonna lie. I've tweeted at him before. Yeah.
Do we think he's using his Twitter?
No, I think he
it.
uses his Twitter and he uses Instagram too. Not gonna lie, have commented on posts, David.
You want it for this podcast?
No, it's my mission in life. I have a letter that I wrote to him as an 8-year-old girl, saying that he's my idol. I write that even though I'm a girl, he's my idol.
Were you romantically interested in him as an 8-year-old?
I don't think romantically. He was my idol. I say you're my idol. I don't say like I'm in love with you. No, I do say I'm in love with you. I say, hi, my name is Lucie. I'm 8 years old. You're my idol, and I'm in love with you. Yes, I was. But when you're 8, you don't know what that is romantically.
Do you think you would be romantically interested in him now if you met him?
No, although I auditioned for a part in a show that was shooting in Germany where I would have had to kiss him.
Wow.
And then I was like, I'm going to get this. This my whole life has led up to this. I didn't get it. I was like, I'm going to get this. My whole life has led up to this. This is what it's all been about. Everything has fucking come down to this moment. And then when I really thought about like having to make out with him, I was like, I don't think I want to do that.
And so that's why you didn't go for the part?
No, I went for the part anyway, of course. I mean, hello. Actors don't have integrity, do they? I'd never do that. Oh, I got the part? Of course I'll do it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, then you'd be acting, so.
Exactly. I'd be acting like I was into it.
Yeah.
No, but thinking about it, I was like,
him.
Yeah, I was like, ooh, I don't think I want to do that.
He's just kind of like, I don't want to say anything about I feel like he means a lot to you, and I don't want to.
say whatever you want. I'm
He's kind of corny.
He's super corny. He's very
he has a
corny.
gigantic torso like, compared to his legs.
That was the success of Baywatch.
A lot of torso.
You know, Baywatch is still one of the most syndicated and most successful TV shows of all time, ever in the history of television. And it was all him.
Yeah, it was Pamela Anderson too. Let's not forget.
I mean all him in the sense of like he shopped the show around and nobody wanted it, so he produced it himself, basically.
Oh, I see. Yeah. It makes sense to me, even though it doesn't make sense because it's so weirdly soothing. It's so vapid and soothing.
Right. Yeah,
it's like
that's so true.
Yeah,
you can turn your mind off.
Yeah, which I think is the strength of America.
The strength of America,
American
for sure.
media.
And it's like this perfect thing, this perfect image of America for the rest of the world. It's like they think like everybody just like runs down the beach and is perfect, and
Yeah, and I think that's like a big part of why American media is so successful, right? And it's continued on. Like the Kardashians are just the perfect example of just vapid, mindless.
Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah.
In other countries, they're like, this has to have meaning and a message, and like,
Yeah,
what
but
we have to
people
say
don't want
something.
that. No.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
All right. Youngmi, is there anything besides your amazing podcast, Feeling Asian, that you would like to tell the world about?
No, I think that's it. We're doing, we have some live shows, and you can find all that info on my social media. So you can find me at YM Mayer, and then my TikTok is Youngmi Mayer, but everywhere else I'm YM Mayer.
Great. That's it. Give it up for our amazing guest, Youngmi Mayer. Deporting David Hasselhoff. We solved all the problems of America. The Constitution is fire. No more faces on Mount Rushmore.
The original faces, we need them to return. If that's true.
And now we're going to go and have a little word with the receptionist.
If you liked what you just heard, don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, recommend to all your friends. And if you hated it, recommend it to your enemies. Thank you for listening to Immigrant Jam, the podcast with me, Lucie Pohl. Have a delicious and nutritious day.